According to Islamic tradition, they are keys to understanding the very nature of Allah, each one revealing a facet of divine reality, a characteristic of the Creator that permeates all of creation. But here is where the mystery deepens. In the late 20th century, physicists proposed something extraordinary called string theory, a framework suggesting that the fundamental building blocks of the universe are not particles, but tiny vibrating strings of energy. These strings vibrate at different frequencies, and each frequency corresponds to a different particle, a different force, a different aspect of physical reality. The universe, according to this theory, is essentially a cosmic symphony, where everything that exists is the result of vibrations, of frequencies resonating through dimensions we cannot see. And here's the astonishing part. Some versions of string theory suggest there are exactly 99 fundamental vibrational modes necessary to describe all of reality. 99 frequencies that govern the behavior of everything from the smallest quark to the largest galaxy. 99 divine names, 99 fundamental frequencies. Is this merely a numerical coincidence, or are we glimpsing something profound? Something that suggests the Quran was revealing the structure of reality long before humanity had the tools to discover it. Sufi mystics took this even further, suggesting that each name carries a specific spiritual energy, a frequency that can transform the soul of the one who invokes it with sincerity and understanding. Now let us turn to the science. String theory emerged in the 1960s and 1970s as physicists struggled to reconcile two pillars of modern physics that seemed fundamentally incompatible: general relativity, which describes gravity and the large-scale structure of the universe, and quantum mechanics, which describes the behavior of subatomic particles. These two theories work brilliantly in their own domains, but when you try to combine them, when you try to describe what happens at the quantum level in the presence of intense gravitational fields, the mathematics breaks down, producing infinities and impossibilities. String theory offered a solution. Instead of treating particles as dimensionless points, what if they were actually tiny loops of energy, strings vibrating in multiple dimensions? The different vibrational patterns of these strings would give rise to all the different particles and forces we observe, but here is where it becomes truly fascinating. For the mathematics of string theory to work, for it to produce a consistent description of reality without contradictions, the universe cannot have just the three spatial dimensions we experience plus time. It requires additional dimensions, hidden dimensions curled up so small that we cannot perceive them directly. Different versions of string theory propose different numbers of total dimensions, but many of them converge on specific numbers, and when you calculate the number of fundamental vibrational modes, the number of basic frequencies that can exist in these higher dimensional spaces, the number that emerges in certain formulations is 99. Not 98, not 100, exactly 99. This is where the rational mind must pause. The very first revelation to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the cave of Hira began with the command Iqra, read or recite. The divine message entered the world as sound, as vibration, as frequency. When the Quran is recited properly, following the rules of tajweed, it creates specific patterns of sound, specific frequencies that listeners describe as deeply moving, sometimes bringing tears, sometimes bringing peace, sometimes bringing a sense of awe that is difficult to articulate. There is something about the vibrational pattern of Quranic recitation that affects human consciousness in measurable ways. Modern neuroscience has begun studying this phenomenon. Researchers have found that listening to Quran recitation affects brainwave patterns, inducing states similar to deep meditation, reducing stress hormones, and creating synchronization between different regions of the brain. This brings us to a question that will drive our exploration today. What if the 99 names of Allah are not metaphors, but actual descriptions of the 99 fundamental ways that divine creative power manifests in the physical universe? What if string theory, without intending to, is mapping the attributes of God? And what happens when we begin to see the connections? Now think about what physics tells us. At the most fundamental level, everything in the universe is energy. Matter is energy. Light is energy. The forces that hold atoms together, the gravity that keeps planets in orbit, the electromagnetic fields that allow your brain cells to communicate. All of it is manifestations of energy in different forms. And energy, according to quantum mechanics and string theory, is fundamentally about vibration, about waves, about frequencies. An electron is not a tiny ball orbiting an atomic nucleus. It is a probability wave, a distribution of potential existence that collapses into a specific location only when observed. The entire zoo of particles that physicists have catalogued, all the quarks and leptons and bosons, are just different vibrational modes of the same fundamental entity. Like different notes played on the same cosmic instrument. And here is where the number 99 enters the picture. In certain formulations of string theory, particularly those involving what are called heterotic strings, the mathematics requires a specific number of vibrational modes to maintain consistency. The theory must avoid what physicists call anomalies, mathematical contradictions that would make the theory collapse. To cancel out these anomalies to make the equations work, you need a precise number of fundamental vibrational patterns, and in some versions of the theory, that number is 99. There are 99 ways, 99 fundamental modes, in which the strings can vibrate to produce all of physical reality. Think about what this means. If string theory is correct, and that remains a big if, since we currently lack the technology to test it directly, then everything you see around you, every atom in your body, every star in the sky, every force and particle and field is the result of just 99 fundamental frequencies. The afterglow of creation itself. And the light, is not just a name, it is a description of the fundamental nature of manifestation. But we must go deeper still, because the connection between divine names and frequencies is not just about individual correspondences, it is about the system as a whole. The 99 names are not random. They have an order, a structure, a relationship to each other. Some names describe majesty and power, like Al-Aziz, the mighty, and Al-Jabbar, the compeller. Others describe gentleness and mercy, like Ar-Ra'uf, the compassionate, and Al-Latif, the subtle. Some describe knowledge, like Al-Alim, the all-knowing, and Al-Kabir, the all-aware. Others describe action, like Ar-Razak, the provider, and Al-Fatah, the opener. Islamic scholars have categorized these names in various ways, noting that they represent a complete spectrum of divine attributes, from absolute transcendence to intimate immanence, from overwhelming power to tender care. The totality of the 99 names presents a full picture of how Allah relates to creation. Similarly, in string theory, the 99 vibrational modes are not isolated. They interact with each other, combine with each other, modulate each other to produce the rich complexity of the universe. A single particle is not just one frequency. It is a combination of multiple vibrational modes, a chord rather than a single note. Now we arrive at a precipice, a point where logic meets mystery. If what we are suggesting is true, if the 99 names of Allah correspond in some deep way to 99 fundamental frequencies of reality, then what does it mean to recite these names? What happens when a human being who is also made of vibrating strings, who is also a pattern of frequencies, calls out Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Malik, Ya Quddus? Are we simply making sounds, or are we tuning ourselves to the fundamental frequencies of creation? Are we aligning our being with the attributes of the divine, not metaphorically, but literally? There is emerging evidence that sound frequencies themselves have direct effects on biological systems at the cellular and molecular level. This field, sometimes called cymatics or vibrational medicine, has documented how specific sound frequencies can influence the behavior of cells, the formation of patterns in fluids, even the expression of genes. When a sound wave passes through water, and the human body is approximately 60% water, it creates patterns of vibration. Different frequencies create different patterns. Some frequencies create harmonious, symmetrical patterns. Others create chaotic, disorganized patterns. In experiments, researchers have exposed cells to various sound frequencies and observed that certain frequencies promote healing and growth, while others induce stress responses. The frequency of 528 Hz, for example, has been called the love frequency by some researchers, associated with DNA repair and the reduction of stress hormones. Consciousness is not separate from the quantum realm. Consciousness is part of the vibrational fabric of reality. And if that is true, then practices that deliberately work with vibration, with sound, with frequency, like the recitation of divine names, are not just psychological exercises. They are technologies for directly interacting with the quantum level of existence. The Quran hints at this in subtle ways. In Surah Al-Isra, verse 44, we read, "The seven heavens and the earth and whatever is in them exalt him. And there is not a thing except that it exalts by his praise, but you do not understand their way of glorifying. Everything in existence is engaged in tasbih, glorification of Allah. But we do not understand the language, the mode, the frequency of their praise." If the 99 names are frequencies, does that reduce Allah to physics? Does it make the divine nothing more than vibrating strings? Absolutely not, and this is a crucial distinction. String theory, if correct, describes the mechanism of creation, the how. It does not and cannot address the why or the who. The strings themselves do not explain their own existence. They do not explain why they vibrate in these particular 99 patterns rather than some other number or no patterns at all. They do not explain the laws that govern their vibration, or why those laws are mathematical, or why mathematics itself exists and corresponds to physical reality. These are questions that physics cannot answer because they are questions about ultimate causation, about purpose, about the ground of being itself. Islam teaches that Allah is not part of creation. Allah is the creator, utterly transcendent, beyond time and space and matter. When we say that the 99 names might correspond to 99 fundamental frequencies, we are not saying that Allah is those frequencies. We are saying that those frequencies are traces of divine action, signatures of divine attributes in the created order. Much like a painting bears the signature of the artist, but is not itself the artist. Is the same God who structured the quantum fields. Why would there not be connections? But there is more to this story, another layer that we have not yet explored, a place where the number 99 appears not just in string theory, but in other unexpected corners of physics and mathematics. Patterns that seem to whisper that this number is not arbitrary, that it carries significance woven into the very code of existence. Let us turn our attention to something that might seem unrelated at first, but bears a striking connection to our investigation. The nature of light and the structure of the periodic table. You probably learned in school that atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons, and that the number of protons determines what element an atom is. 1 proton, and you have hydrogen. 6 protons, carbon, 79 protons, gold. As of now, scientists have discovered or created 118 elements, though many of the higher numbered ones are unstable and exist only briefly in laboratories. But there is something fascinating about the number 99 in this context. Element 99 is Einsteinium, named after Albert Einstein. It is a synthetic element, created artificially, and it occupies a special place in the periodic table because it is near the boundary of what is possible. Beyond Einsteinium, elements become increasingly unstable, existing for microseconds or less before decaying. Einsteinium itself has a half-life measured in days or months, depending on the isotope. It is as if element 99 represents a threshold, a boundary between what can exist stably in our universe and what cannot. The practice of reciting all 99 names, moving through them one by one, would be like playing a scale that covers the full spectrum of divine manifestation. A sonic journey through the complete range of how Allah acts in creation. You would be tuning your being, string by string, frequency by frequency, to resonate with the totality of the divine attributes reflected in the universe. This brings us to a provocative question. Can these frequencies be measured? Can we actually determine what specific Hz value corresponds to Ar-Rahman or Al-Malik? With current technology, probably not in any definitive way. We can measure the acoustic frequencies of someone reciting the names, but those are the frequencies of sound waves in air, not necessarily the deep quantum frequencies we are theorizing about. To measure those, we would need instruments sensitive to quantum vibrations at scales far smaller than anything we can currently detect. String theory itself remains unproven precisely because the energies and scales it deals with are beyond our current experimental reach. We can write the mathematics, we can see that it is internally consistent, we can see that it makes predictions that might be testable someday. But we cannot yet put a string under a microscope and watch it vibrate. But here is the thing, the absence of measurement does not mean the absence of reality. Perhaps in the future, we will develop ways to measure these divine frequencies directly. Or perhaps, and this is worth considering, the only instrument sensitive enough to detect them is the human soul itself, properly tuned through spiritual practice. After all, consciousness remains the one thing that science cannot fully explain or reduce to mechanism. The one phenomenon that stubbornly resists being treated as just another physical system. Now we arrive at the heart of the matter. The insight that ties everything together and reveals why this convergence of Islam and science is not just intellectually interesting, but spiritually transformative. The universe, according to string theory, is held together by vibration. Remove the vibration and there is nothing. The strings are not objects that vibrate, the vibration is what they are. In a very real sense, existence itself is a continuous act, a sustained frequency, an ongoing song. The universe is not a thing that was created once and then left to run on its own. It is being created at every instant, held in existence moment by the will of the Creator. The Quran expresses this in Surah Fatir, verse 41. Indeed, Allah holds the heavens and the earth lest they cease, and if they should cease, no one could hold them after him. Indeed, He is forbearing and forgiving. This is not poetic metaphor, this is ontological reality. If the fundamental nature of matter is vibration, and vibration requires a source, then the existence of the universe at this very moment requires that the source is active right now. Allah is not a distant engineer who built a machine and walked away. Allah is the ongoing cause of every vibration, every quantum fluctuation, every moment of existence. The divine names are not just labels for past acts of creation. They are descriptions of what Allah is doing now, in this instant and every instant. Ar-Razak, the provider, is providing right now, sustaining the quantum fields that allow atoms to maintain their structure, that allow stars to fuse hydrogen into helium, that allow plants to convert sunlight into food. Al-Mahi, the giver of life, is giving life right now, maintaining the impossibly complex dance of biochemical reactions that keeps your heart beating and your neurons firing. Al-Hakim, the wise, is manifesting wisdom right now in the mathematical precision with which gravity balances expansion to allow galaxies to exist. And here is the staggering implication. If you recite these names with understanding, you are not just acknowledging something that happened in the past. You are participating in what is happening right now. You are consciously aligning yourself with the ongoing creative act of the universe. You become, in a sense, a co-resonator, a conscious node in the cosmic symphony. This is what the Sufis mean when they speak of fana, annihilation of the self, not in the sense of ceasing to exist, but in the sense of ceasing to experience yourself as separate from the whole. When you recite Yahey Yakayim, O ever-living, O sustainer of all, and you do so with full presence and intention, the boundary between your consciousness and the divine attribute being invoked begins to dissolve. You realize that the life in you is not separate from the life that sustains all existence. You are a particular expression of Al-Hayy, a localized manifestation of the universal frequency of life itself. This is why the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that whoever enumerates the names will enter paradise. To truly enumerate them is not to count them on your fingers or memorize a list. It is to comprehend them, to internalize them, to become transparent to them so that they shine through you. And paradise, in this understanding, is not just a future reward in the afterlife. It is a state of consciousness, a way of experiencing reality, available even now, in which you perceive the divine attributes manifesting in everything. You see Ar-Rahman, mercy, in the rain that falls. You see Al-Fatah, the opener, in the opportunities that appear. You see Al-Ghaffar, the forgiving, in the capacity for new beginnings. The universe becomes a living theophany, a continuous revelation of divine names in action. Modern physics, without intending to, has provided a framework for understanding this mystical insight in almost literal terms. If everything is vibration, if you are vibration, if the objects around you are vibrations, then changing your vibration changes your reality. Not in some magical, wishful thinking sense, but in the straightforward sense that what you are able to perceive and interact with depends on what frequency you are resonating at. A radio tuned to 101.5 FM cannot detect a broadcast on 95.3 FM, not because the 95.3 signal is not there, but because the radio is not tuned to it. Similarly, a consciousness attuned only to the material, to the surface level of physical appearances, will perceive a very different reality than a consciousness attuned to the divine names, to the deeper frequencies of wisdom, mercy, beauty, and truth that underlie and sustain the physical. This is what prayer does. This is what dhikr does. This is what meditation on the divine names does. It is not asking an external deity to change external circumstances, though that may happen. It is changing your own frequency, tuning yourself to be able to perceive and inter.